Yeah,
Gonna leave
so
that out there.
I'm still wondering for why not Lisa is kind of pause for Ryzen today.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I think probably because we released the Pro version today, right? And of course, we released the consumer version of the same chip this last
exactly.
summer. So in fairness, I think she's already held it up.
Yeah, maybe you need a more effort, so next time.
Okay, I will definitely work harder. I probably didn't put in enough hours. That's further from.
24 hours a day? Not good.
Yeah, it's the next step, I think.
So I'm thinking one of the things we saw today at the presentation was like a smattering of new use cases, but just for the purposes of this video, can you just briefly go over what those new use cases are, or the additional ones? Because we know about the blurring of the backgrounds and the translation of the languages. I mean, what we want is to be able to use as much of the AI as possible offline, directly on device. So how close are we to that? And what are these new AI use cases?
I think you're speaking specifically about the use cases Microsoft was showing in the video and so forth.
That's right. But I mean, if there's other ones that you want to talk about as well, given that you have all the ISVs that you're working with.
Sure. I mean, Microsoft announced it, so I'm going to use public information. So these are part of our Copilot Plus experiences that Microsoft announced, which is coming to the Ryzen 300 series, both consumer version and the Pro version. They have divided their features broadly into three sets. The first set is what you talked about, video conferencing. It's not just about the blur. They have other features about audio framing, relighting and stuff, right? Then there's a set of generative AI features. They talked about how you can use Paint to do text to image, image to image. What they showed today was a step up on top of that, from a consumer lens, how you can change your pictures, do super resolutions, do generative fill and stuff, right? The third bucket of use cases that they talked about, which I think is very powerful, is what they call as recall, right? And that's only possible because of an NPU, because there is a set of a machine learning model that's running in the background, trying to understand what you're doing and doing what we call as a semantic search to give you extremely personalized results. Like when you're searching for a document, the example that they showed, searching for a document, based on if you want to go back to a workspace that you were working on yesterday and stuff, right? And I think you can't do that if you don't have a powerful NPU engine. Those are the broad three sets of bucket that Microsoft showed, and I was just coming from a developer session we had on Ryzen AI. We are building on top of Microsoft, whatever Microsoft is doing, right? Trying to attract developers and make their life easy on how they can generate and develop new applications on Ryzen AI. There again, large language models, or some people call it SLM. For me, it's a large language model because it's more than 1 billion parameters. The world has shrunk, right? We used to think billion parameters models are big. Now we call them SLMs, like small language models. So we are putting a lot of effort in our software stack to make running these large language models locally very efficiently. We have partnered with a few ISVs. I do think that's going to be another very, very innovative use case. Like there will be use cases that you'll have to use OpenAI when you want to do a complicated use case or complicated query. But a lot of times you are looking for some quick answers. Hey, what did I see in this document? Summarize this document for me. Hey, summarize this email for me. All of that doesn't actually need a power of a 400 billion parameter model. They can work really fine on a small language models. So the LLM models has been very exciting. The second piece is generative piece about generating new content using artificial models. That's the second set of use case, which has the potential of turning all of us into creators of videos, or can make us sound better and look better, right? Those are all emerging use cases that I'm really excited about.
So I think also this time, so you have an announcement of a 55 top SKU. So your top SKU support 55 tops in NPU. So what is the differences between 55 and the 50? Just frequencies or
5 tops?
Yeah, 5 tops. I understand, but in technological point of view, so what is the differences between two? So
It's a performance, right? Frequency happens to be one part of it, but in general, this part will give you better performance, right? And back to the use cases we talked about. If you're running a chatbot, it's going to be more responsive. If you're generating an image, it's going to be more responsive. So there will be that performance which will translate into a real world use cases about being more responsive and being more performant.
I think 55 top SKU is only for for HP one in the consumer side, but pro side, so you have regular SKU so on there. So why do you choose this kind of so differences between consumer and pro version?
Yeah, great question. So our stack, when we develop it, is something designed specifically to be able to service, with our OEM partners. And when we work with OEM partners, sometimes we partner up in additional ways, right? And it's particularly where they have an interest in special investment. And that's part of bringing a product to market and allowing our OEMs to build from there as well. And I think in this case, both on the consumer and the pro side, we'll see a lot of parallel.
Okay.
Right.
How soon before we get to triple digits, 100 tops?
Soon.
I mean,
I know these are the ones you want to sell now, but it's like I remember, 256 meg and 512 meg and then a gig. And I mean, you can't buy a 1 gig stick, USB stick anymore. You can't buy two. I don't think you can buy 4. It's like 8's the minimum. So
yeah, so
won't be long.
There's two ways to answer that, right? I mean, we could say, well, we can't comment on future announced products,
But
of course.
we all know it's coming, but
Right. But I think the other way to think about it, just in a more broad, general sense, is that as we've marched forward, right, we didn't start with the 50 tops NPU because we were working forward with our partners.
Yeah.
And part of that is, of course, what Microsoft is looking for in order to create these Copilot experiences. And when you look at that, they're not just creating the experiences specific that Rakesh is talking about, they're also creating the ability for us to work hand in hand in a way to make the use of these kind of experiences everyday interactions. At the same time, they're a leader in the market because they're introducing and helping the rest of the Windows ecosystem come along, right? And they're doing more in the background, and we're partnered with that as well in the development side, thus the development side of this meeting here.
And it's obviously not so easy to just drop 100 tops, otherwise you would have done it.
Well,
I mean, it takes time.
I mean, it's Silicon area, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, we want to make sure it's used.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean, where we want that whole community to come forward. There's two sides, right? So one side is the app, the model that's going to be using that. And of course, at the same time, when we're bringing more things in, models are shrinking. Rakesh could talk a lot about that. It's amazing what you can do with those tops now.
Yeah.
But on the other side, you have more applications working at the same time. So you start to get into concurrency, right? Which is, in concept, not that much different than the same multitasking we're accustomed to on our laptops all day long, right? Like, who runs one application? I don't. And so I think we're going to see all these factors grow, and we'll introduce the product as we see the need.
Yeah, as the time is right.
So this time, buffer zone support your NPU. So you mean, they get phishing, realize phishing, or something. So could you give me a more detail about support buffer zone support your APU? So just for Ryzen AI software or direct ML, so blah blah blah. So what do you think of?
We highlighted the two. I don't know if you got that slide, buffer zone and Dynamo AI, in one of the briefings.
Okay. I was like, that was a very specific question.
Yeah.
So
Okay. I mean, it's in general, security ISVs like buffer zone are a perfect example of how they can benefit from NPU. When we're talking to our enterprise customers, the feedback is pretty simple. Hey, you were giving us all of these great tools. We want to make sure that our battery life doesn't suffer, our fans don't go on, and our CPU utilization is offloaded so that I can do other things, right? So, and something like buffer zone, where we take their workload, offload it on the NPU, hits that right sweet spot of providing great user experience. So we are partnered with buffer zone and Dynamo, as John was highlighting, and a bunch of other ISVs to make sure that they can use our Ryzen AI. And Ryzen AI just doesn't mean NPU. Ryzen AI means NPU, GPU and CPU. We want to work with these ISVs, give them the tools so that they can offload their model easily into any of these accelerators based on a specific use
Yeah,
case.
so it's so direct ML or so Ryzen AI, so or your competitors OpenVINO, so NVIDIA CUDA. What is the benefit? What is a user and also developer benefit? I think direct ML is a pretty easy so to implement in the future. So like direct 3D. So in graphic side. So yeah, I think. But if everybody uses still so Ryzen AI, OpenVINO, so CUDA is a software compatibility issue is still so going on. So I think direct ML is a future of us. So what do you think about that?
So there is an important distinction that we have made and invested in. Lisa talked about it, even Wamsi talked about it. So for us, we have heavily invested in Onyx. So Onyx is our front end. Even when you talk about our Ryzen AI software, when you talk about running models on the NPU, Onyx API is our front end. And what does that do? That makes sure that when you're working with buffer zone, right? If buffer zone has implemented, using Onyx, they can use the same API on AMD, on our competition. And that's an important distinctive competitive advantage that we have. To your point, when an ISV wants to offload their model, let's say on our competition, they have to go to OpenVINO, Snappy, change their APIs to suit that specific platform. But we made a call that we're going to invest with Microsoft. Onyx is going to be our front end. Yes, we have our own execution provider and compiler like everybody does. And that's been our step number one.
I see.
Onyx, make it simple for the developer to adapt across platforms. What you're highlighting is direct ML step 2, right? We already support direct ML for our GPU, and we're building to add support for NPU as well. But I think people miss the distinction that to get the best performance out of an AMD NPU, you can use Onyx, which is cross-platform API.
I think Onyx is including a model, so and framework. So is this understanding correct?
Correct. So Onyx is basically a framework, and it's also language. So you take a model, it's either written in Onyx and you convert it to Onyx. Then you have an Onyx API that an application calls, and then this Onyx can call any other compiler underneath. So if you're an application developer, if you are using an Onyx API, when you move from, let's say, AMD to the competition, you don't have to change your API.
I think that's so important. Yeah.
Yes.
I agree.
I have a question. So there was a presentation you were talking about trusted IO. So I mean, you guys are the first ones to do it, or why is it so important for your customers as well?
I think the trusted IO, if I'm not wrong, came up in the concept of a Turin launch, and it's probably not our product to get deeper into that. Yes.
So I think also you have an implementation of AMD Secure Processor, so 2.0. So what is the differences between previous version and the 2.0? So it's yesterday. So I think your Karajas said just update version of 1.2, 1.0 and the 2.0. So some capabilities are updating, but detail. he don't say it so detail of that. So could you give me a more detail about just 2.0?
So the secure 2.0 layer actually refers to. I mean, we called out 3, and there are a couple of more which we didn't put on there. They're more smaller minute things, but so these 3 things. There's the the cloud bare metal recovery, which is very much around the ability to for an IT manager, right, to do a recovery without having to always have things shipped back into them. And so this gets very directly at a pain point for enterprises, right? And so that's where we're going with that one quite clearly.
Yeah, but I think this is a pro capability. So
it's a what?
Yeah, it's a pro capability enhancement. So
yes, so this is all under the AMD Pro security.
So it's none of the consumer.
Security processor 2.0.
So, you're asking very specifically.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and what I'm telling you is that these,
and
those are coupled.
So enhancements.
They're coupled.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the coupling. Although there is a little bit more to it. I'm just going to tell you, I'm not the right person to tell you the details of that. So we need to connect you. There are some materials and so forth, so we can pull those out. I think. I apologize. I didn't understand the beginning of your question. Thank you for being willing to offer that.
All good, yeah. And so the only difference between the consumer and the Pro version is the Pro Security and the AMD version of the V Pro Management.
Yes. So and also the warranties that come with the Pro Technologies offer.
Sure.
So those are the three.
How much longer is the warranty compared to the consumer version?
So it's a minimum. I think it's 18 months off the top of my head.
Sure. Yeah, no, you can confirm
roughly speaking. And it speaks to how we keep different software things current and running.
Yeah. Well, enterprise has different.
Exactly. It's very enterprise specific to its needs.
I think also last gen, so Phoenix gen, so you can support a cloud-based, remote device support. So on a 70/40 series. So yeah, I think it's so important. So because it's pretty easy to support outside of a firewall. So
Yes.
But
Yeah, that was a recognition of where the world had gone after COVID, right? A couple of years back, and that's absolutely vital. I can't imagine an IT department not wanting that at this stage, right? That's kind of
I agree.
Feels very dated.
Any specific reason like why you're targeting enterprise and not consumer through this?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things. First of all, we are targeting both, just to kind of level set. But I think the enterprise has a special set of reasons, right? So let's talk about it. I think it's three main reasons, right? So reason number one, what's the age of most of the fleet in enterprise? Well, the last big refresh was when everyone was dealing with the COVID and everything going on. Well, that makes those machines fairly dated, right? And everybody's looking at that and what they're going to do about it. Number two, we have Windows 10 end of service upon us, right? And there's a lot of need to figure out what they're going to do about that again. So second piece of it, right? And so then on top of that, you got this motivation to drive a wave. We see this from time to time in the industry. And then you have the opportunity to buy a PC with quite a bit of performance, right? And that's a lot of what we're offering with the Ryzen AI Pro 300, right? It's a very performant system. It can do a lot of things. You may remember the slide Jason put up yesterday, which was, we just updated, just across all these different things, right? Whether it was graphics, NPU, cores, the RAM on it, like every single thing is updated. Well, the reason for that, and the coupling, among other things, is that we're not just preparing them for what's coming, today, October 2024, we're also recognizing that the development world is going someplace here, and it's moving rapidly, right? And as we work with those partners, we recognize that Microsoft's bringing things, and so is everybody else. And so knowing that an enterprise needs to bring in-house something that's going to have some longevity, they need to have a little bit of future-proofing at the same time, right? They just can't solve yesterday's problem. And in this case, that means a little bit of overhead on an NPU, and it means that this is a very good moment for AI PCs in general to come into the introduction. So thus, we have a moment for enterprise PCs. I would add to all of that one other general trend that I think we've observed several times with technology, and that is that frequently we're introduced to certain kinds of tooling from a functional basis in our work lives, and they come back, right? And then as we become accustomed to that tooling, we expect it in the other parts of our life. In fact, we very much miss it in our consumer side, and we kind of get demanding and say, I expect it over here as well, right? And so, of course, we're selling it to consumer, but looking at all these moments, knowing it'll introduce people, as they get used to it, it becomes part of their everyday experience. They're not just going to say everyday AI experience. We would say that looking forward, but they'll say looking back, everyday experience. And then it'll translate over to expectations elsewhere.
And 2020 and 2021, there was no AI PCs. And if there was the very beginnings of it, and there was no ChatGPT, not till late 2022. So it's like, it's time to update for a lot of people. And some people will still want to sweat their assets a bit longer, but
Sure.
if they wait another year, they'll get even more. But a lot of people,
That's the
time to
trade-off you
upgrade.
make, right? Like,
Yeah.
and some people
Can wait
refreshed
forever.
last year, and
Yeah.
of course everybody's at their spot.
Yeah.
But that's why you're looking at the larger industry waves, and I think that bears out when you look at Gartner data or IDC data, where they're showing these large gross in AI PCs now, and across fleets, they have different price points to meet and so forth. But it all meets together around certain performance needs, along the different process functions, recognizing where you're going, not just where you're at.
To bring up a term that we became very familiar with during the pandemic and then pretty much never heard of since, it's the new normal.
Thank you for that. Very much appreciated. That little shot down memory lane.
But it's the truth at the same time. And one of the questions I asked yesterday was, when are you going to stop making, chips without AI at all? And it's probably towards the end of the decade, because there's still a place for some PCs in some areas to not have it, but everybody else wants it.
Sure.
Adding to that, so I had another question. Like, are you entering like AR VR market because you're seeing the demand there as well in terms of away from PCs? People want the glasses.
You meaning with these same processors, or meaning generally? Or?
In general, like it's something. What's next after AR?
Although I would say the glasses with the AI inside, because that's what
You have assumed we're here the whole time. We're virtual. No, I'm kidding. Of course. It sounds fun. And I will tell you this much: AMD is looking at every opportunity you can think of all the time. Like that's what we do. And can't talk about where all those roadmaps take us, but we've had fun and exciting form factor discussions. I think non-enterprise, but what we did with the Z1 series a year and a half or so ago, right, and brought into handheld gaming, is one example of taking something, putting it in a completely different form factor, and kind of changing the basis upon which that works.
And with the glasses, we had the mixed reality glasses, which from the different companies, which more or less, they more or less flopped, because we all wanted the augmented reality glasses that we're seeing from Apple, and then the ones from Meta. So even if there's this trend for glasses, it keeps growing. Like everything else, keeps evolving and changing.
Yeah.
And so you have to be ready to jump in at the right point.
Yeah.
And have evolved your technologies to fit into the stem of glasses, or a little puck, whatever it is.
Sure.
Yeah. So the AMD labs must be like with Apple, a top secret place.
Like what's next after APCs? So I think that answers. Yeah.
There'll be plenty of fun, and we'll talk about it when it comes out.
Well, we're going to have a Neuralink AMD equivalent. I want the wireless version. I don't want it to be drilled into my head.
Yeah.
How much thoughts do you want in that?
Yeah. A million. A billion.
So it's competing with something which
Yeah,
already
that's it.
has
Well, it's meant to be an augmentation, not a replacement, right? We don't want AI to replace us. We don't want the million tops to replace us. We've got to work together.
So anyway, your business notebook PC lineup is pretty much growing. So in recent years, because I think as your culture said, server business is from 0 to 34%, but I think business notebook PC is pretty similar. So almost 0. So to recent years, so the share is growing up. So what is the biggest reason why AMD is successful on this notebook PC market? So especially in the business side.
So she was speaking of I think the data center at the time for that particular number, but our growth and focus on enterprise has been the technology, of course, but it's also been our partnerships. That's vital to making sure that we are listening and adapting to those markets. It's not different than a lot of businesses that you need to be, but you need to be very determined in this business, right? And so we're working on that as best we can. We're grateful that partners have both instructed us and stay with us and grow with us. We think those are all very positives. They're the type of thing in a virtuous cycle that can improve us. I think the other thing that has played into that has been where we have brought leadership technology, right? And we've been able to expose people to that. show them what we can do, maybe rearrange a little bit of their thinking about caveats they thought on power trade-offs or form factor trade-offs. And so those are things, of course, that we try to discuss both with partners and customers. And we find that, when we have the right conversation on those, we have technology that's worth their time. And, I think we'll continue to advance along those lines. I would also say that, part of the AMD premise, not just the PC premise, is that we're also doing more than just PCs, right? So our rapid ability to advance on other key enterprise data center, right, AI infrastructure, brings to the IT department, the CIO, the need to already have discussion along these topics. AMD being a leader, we come into the space, we can have a broader discussion and talk about how all of it works. And that is all very, very compelling. At least we find it compelling. We present it that way.
And lots of synergy.
Yeah.
Yes, and so it's a cycle that we expect to continue using going forward.
Yeah, I think so. Today, Lenovo guys said they have an announcement of a T14S for Strix Pro. So yeah, I think for example, T14S is a pretty much good platform competitor 3 manufacturer. So you mean Snapdragon, your Strix Pro, Intel's Ultra Core.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very,
It's obviously a very popular platform and serves as a strong, business-ready sort of platform. I think we'll see offerings that come of that type. We want to be partnered there, and also those that are a little bit more creative in terms of how they can use form factor, materials, design, other things to appeal to people who are focused slightly elsewhere, right? And,
yeah.
We need to.
Oh, we're at wrap time? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, great talking to all of you.
Great talking to you guys.
Good questions. Thanks for giving him some of them.
Yeah.